here and we have a busy agenda, I'd like to get started and then we'll get our agenda adjustments made. I'll call the meeting to order at 6:58 a.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get going, I'd like to remind everyone to please, during the meeting, speak clearly and one at a time, so that I know last meeting, April and I discussed that there was a little difficulty hearing some board members during the meeting, and a couple times people were talking at the same time. And it might work in here, but it's hard to hear on Zoom. Is that correct, April?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so let's be considerate and speak one at a time and clearly. So Pledge of Allegiance is done. For the agenda, we would like to move, we'd like to add the student, first reading of the student handbooks, which are in your packet. Let's add that right. We'll make that item G2. That's under the first reading of the 21-22 budget. We'd like to move the school resource officer discussion from down in the superintendent's report as an item L under action items. You received an email from Superintendent Steinhoff about that, so we'd like to move that to action items. Are there any other proposed additions or changes to the agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the amended agenda? Nagel moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Schmitz seconds. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries. So then on to our agenda. Recognition of visitors. We have our distinguished principals and Dave here. Anybody else with us on Zoom?
Nope, just me.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And then moving on to public communications, there were a number of thank yous in your packet. I would also like to highlight, I received this email from Patty Setterlin-Hampel, who graduated from Oaks High School in, I believe, 1967 or 69. And what an amazing fan and supporter of Oaks activities. I wanted this in here. I want you all to be aware of course, we had a state championship a couple of weeks ago. And this is some history of the state championship sign at Cummings Field. So I think it's important for us to acknowledge those celebrations of our student activities from alumni and supporters. Okay, with that, we are to canvass the election. Are we supposed to have ballots to open or anything, April?
We had no ballots come in after the election, and we had no set aside ballots. So the results are in your packet. I'll share the screen here. And so I just need a motion to, I guess, review the results and then declare the winners.
All right, so according to the information in our packet, last June 1st, our polls were open. There were a total of 273 votes cast. For one position, Sonia Meal received 174 votes, Brian Sire 99. In the other position, John Bakke was on the ballot and received 123 votes. Write-in candidate Monica Handbook received 139. Jessica Quant 1, Dana Sunby 1. So with that, I would request a motion to approve the results of the election with Sonia Meal being elected and Monica Handbook.
Motion to approve the election.
Nagel moves to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Rosendahl, second. Is there any discussion?
How, so when we voted, is it counted electronically?
No.
Because then it's when they're on the write-in, how does that work?
Well, April, Director Thorpe asks, how does it work counting write-in ballots?
So all the ballots are hand counted, and then there's a tally sheet. So the two judges, they have to count until their numbers actually match. And in this time, not only did the judges count, but myself plus the clerks all counted to make sure that we were at the same numbers. But yes, they were all hand counted, and then we just write their names on a tally sheet.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, is there any further discussion on the motion to approve the election results? Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And congratulations, congratulations to Monica Handbook, and thank you much to Brian Sire and John Bakke for interest, and for also all the voters and everyone that participated in the election. So thank you. The next item on the agenda is the 2021 Hall of Fame induction. A couple of years, well, several years ago, for several years, Brenda Tyre and I had been the committee that recommended the Hall of Fame inductees. It got to the point where I had seen so many of the same people for so many years that, you know, we retain all of the nominees each year. So the last 2 or 3 years, I've asked as an independent board, who I won't even name, but sometimes former school board members and members of the public, and I always try to have someone from outside that didn't grow, that lives here now or works here now, but didn't grow up in our community, for a fresh set of eyes. And this year, I'm pleased to report to you that the recommendation committee is recommending a 2000 OHS graduate who was an outstanding high school wrestler, a 4-time state place winner for the Tornadoes, a state champion in his junior year. He attended Jamestown College, majoring in criminal justice, and wrestled there also, a 4-time national qualifier, a scholar athlete, and he is now with the North Dakota Highway Patrol. And this, our recommendation is Major Tom Iverson. The committee was particularly pleased to have an opportunity to recognize law enforcement in the current environment. And there are, I will assure you, there are numerous very worthy nominees in our packet to be carried on to future years. But with that, I would entertain a motion to approve Tom Iverson as our Hall of Fame inductee for 2021.
I'll make that motion.
Robert Thorpe moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Schmitz seconds. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion passes. All right, next we have audit bids. April, can you lead us through that discussion?
Yep, so we did publish a request for bids in the paper. We weren't receiving any, so I sent emails out to Ide Bailey, Harold Rotunda, Brady Martz, and a couple other ones. And so they returned some quick bids or quotes, as you can see in your packet. We'll start with the scary ones first. Brady, let's see. Ide Bailey came back and said it'd be $35,000 to $40,000 for a 2-year audit.
And what do we need, April? We need a 2-year audit?
This year we'll do a 2-year audit. If we end up spending all of our ESSER funds in 1 year, then we'll need an annual audit. So that's where they talk about the single audit will cost more. But as of right now, since we're not spending over that $700,000 federal funding, we can do a 2-year audit. Brady Martz, theirs was about $30,000. Plus additional, again, if they want the single audit. And then Harold Rotunda came back with $7,900 with an additional fee of $4,200 if we need a single audit for next year or moving forward. But the last 2 years, we wouldn't need a single audit. So with that, it would be Harold would be the lowest responsible bid, I guess. And I've worked with Harold before.
His proposal says that it says a single audit is required for the year ended.
That is and I need to talk to him because we did not spend over that. Because a single audit was required for year ending June 30th, 2021. We didn't spend over that limit. And most schools did. So I can talk to him and we can arrange that or let him know that we don't need that single audit.
So refresh my memory, April. Typically, we have had audits only every other year, correct?
Yep.
And did we, when you came on, and you came on mid-year, did we do a single year audit because of the change over in business managers, or was it our scheduled audit that year?
It was our schedule audit
Okay.
and Versella completed that one.
And she's not, evidently, she would have bid if she's interested in continuing
Yep.
doing it.
Yep.
Okay, so now, our last audit was for the 2 fiscal years ending in
And then
19 and 20? No, 18 and 19?
Yep.
So now we're seeking bids for a 2-year audit for years ended in 20 and 21, which
Yeah.
we're coming to the end of. And because of possible larger federal spending, we may be required to have 2 single year audits.
yes.
Okay. All right, so is there a motion on your recommendation, or is it a requirement then to accept the lowest bid as long as it is acceptable?
Yes. So I just need a motion to accept the proposals. Yep.
All right, so the lowest bid acceptable and can clearly provide the services is from Harold Rotunda for $7,900 for a 2-year audit. And if an additional 1-year audit is required, which you don't believe it is, right?
No, we did not spend all our money this year.
Okay, so we're looking at a bid of $7,900 for a 2-year audit, and we think that will be acceptable for our needs and the requirements.
Yep.
Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Rosendahl moves to approve the Harold Rotunda bid for a 2-year audit. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thorpe seconds. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Moving on to the Impala bid, which is on page 15 of your packet. Request, or the Impala sale, offered for sale. What's the status of this?
As of today, we've received 0 bids on the Impala. So just wanted to give that to your attention. You can do nothing with it and leave it. It's for sale publicly, and it's still at the minimum bid required of 6,000. Bill, you did mention about dropping it. However, we took this on you afterwards, and we had a motion at the last meeting about what the minimum bid should be, and so we didn't switch it due to not having another motion.
I'll make a motion to move it $5,000.
Thorpe moves to reduce the low bid or the minimum bid for the Impala to $5,000. Is there a second?
Second.
Schmitz seconds. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is the state clean diesel grant, which is in our packet beginning on page 16 called rebate grant agreement. Who can bring us up to speed on this? Greg, April?
I can. I applied for another clean diesel grant and we were awarded it as a school district. And this grant is similar to other grants. It's in the dollar amount of $22,877. And you use it like you have others to replace a bus. And this one is good until September 30th of 2022. And if my memory serves me correct, the next bus that we have that's available, that's eligible for the grant, Dave, if I'm correct, is it number 7?
Yeah.
And number 7 is a spare bus of ours, not being used on a regular route at this time. It's also a manual bus, which is a challenge for some drivers preferring not to drive a manual transmission. It would actually be the last manual transmission that we have. Dave, how many miles does number 7 have on it?
About 248 or something.
And what year is it?
2000.
So it's a 21-year-old bus with 200,000 miles on it.
If we approve this today, do you have to use it then? Because we don't actually have a budget set for next year.
You don't have
April,
to use it till September 30th of 2022. So technically, you can wait till next year, call bids, and as long as you have, you request the grant funds by 2022, you'll still qualify for it. So you can accept the award to replace bus 7, but you can wait and take action on it till next June, basically.
Do we know timeline of even getting a bus? Is it a year or 2 to get a bus?
Dave?
I'm just saying for timelines,
I have not checked. I have no idea on that.
because, I mean, if the deadline is September 22, it might take that long to get a bus. I'm just saying, maybe we should check and see what that timeline is. I don't know. Just because I've heard a lot of things are a long ways out ordering things, so I'm not saying bids, I'm just saying it'd be nice to check and see what that is.
So if we were to approve this grant agreement today and never use it, it would just expire, right?
That is correct.
Okay, that's what I.
Okay, so there's no harm in approving it today.
If you don't use it, use it.
And so a lot
I
of
just didn't
things,
want to say if we did this, that now we're locked.
yeah, now we have to buy a bus. No, okay, good questions. All right, so with that, is there a motion with regard to the rebate grant agreement for the state clean diesel grant, which appears in your packet?
I'll make a motion.
Rosendahl moves to accept the rebate grant agreement for the clean diesel grant. Is there a second? I'll second. Nagel seconds. Is there any discussion? Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Those opposed say no. Motion passes. The grant is approved. Moving on to the transportation report, which starts on 29. Now, this is in a format, maybe it was like this last year, but this isn't what I remember from Tom preparing. In fact, when I first got on the board, we got the transportation report every month, how many miles were on every bus and the repairs. Anyway, so are there any highlights that you want to share with us on this, April?
So this is the annual report required by the DPI. This is what we submit to STARS every year to get our transportation funding. The other report that you're talking about, I'm not quite finished with it because I needed to run the bills this month. So I will submit that in July. And that breaks down like how much each bus cost us this last year.
Okay.
But this report is similar in mileage to not last year, but the year before. just because last year we didn't have that many miles due to shutdown.
Okay, and this is required to be submitted, and so we do need to approve it,
Yes,
so you can submit it, is that correct?
that is correct. It's due by June 30th.
Okay, so we do need to approve. Is there a motion to approve the transportation report?
I'll make a motion.
Schmitz moves to approve the transportation report. Is there a second? How about Nagel? Yeah, Nagel seconds. All right, any questions or discussion on the transportation reports? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion passes, the report is approved. All right, so next we have the first reading of the 21-22 budget. For that, I need to switch over to, that was in a separate file, which was emailed. April, would you like to show us any highlights? Anything we need to be made specially aware of?
Okay.
It's a lot of information. I'm just gonna tell you.
So this sheet here is kind of the summary sheet of what we're looking at. So right now I'm proposing a deficit spending of $107,000. Now, in my email, I noted that I have not included any of the ESSER or CARES funding that we will be receiving or that we have received and will be using. That could offset some of our budget, just for the fact of you can use it for existing expenses. You don't have to use it for something you wouldn't purchase or use. So for example, like classroom furniture, we can use that for that equipment budget instead of using our general fund money. So that could have an impact on our deficit spending. The other thing I have not done is I have not thoroughly went through all the activities funds to make sure that those are actually, what we're wanting to do and make sure there's no significant changes in there. But that is, like I said, it's a good estimate right now of the deficit spending. And this includes the negotiated contract changes and also the proposed admin and classified staff changes.
How about the ones that are gonna come up today?
Yep, those are included in the proposal. Yep.
So if I look at the top, the general fund recap and going all the way over to the first highlighted blue column, that was our budget for this currently ending school year, which showed that we had a beginning balance of 1.178 million. We propose, and the year's not completed yet, but you estimate that we'll have deficit spending of 267,000 roughly for an ending balance of 911,000.
Yep. So that was
Okay.
the proposed budget.
That was the budget. Okay, correct. Okay, so then the
That-
next
Can I
column.
hold up?
Yep, sure.
I remember our proposed budget being just under $1 million carryover, not a 267,000 deficit.
Okay, question about, did you hear that, April?
Yep, I can go back to the old records and see if there was some mistake or whatever, if I've keyed something in wrong on this one.
And then when we have the proposed budget and then there are additional grants that are received, do we change our budget? Or is the budget at the, whatever we approve, is it ever changed for any reason?
I've asked that question. In my city life, we would have to do a budget amendment to make sure that our expenses were all in line at the end of the year. But from what I understand, a school does not need to do a formal budget amendment. It just, if you're over or under, that's just how it ends.
Okay,
There's
and
nothing in
so,
the country code that says that. But this kind of gives you the amended budget. So in July, it'll have all the final numbers in it. But I'll look at the current budget and see, maybe I keyed in something wrong on this sheet.
Because also my understanding was that we were actually gonna end up with a surplus, is what we were told multiple times throughout the year. And now we have our largest deficit we've had since since I've been on the board.
Well, at 1920, actually, the deficit shows 138. Just to the left of the blue budget column.
Am I looking at the numbers wrong? Red is that actually?
Right, but in the blue columns, red is a deficit, but if you look at 1920, just to the left, there's a negative 138,441. And now the estimated 2021 actual deficit is 107 in the middle blue column.
Oh, okay, all right. I was looking at the budget again on the
Yep.
267. That's where I was getting.
So, all right, so let's look at the estimated column. So then the beginning balance of the general fund was about 1.178 million. The estimated actual deficit is about 107,767 for a carryout of about 1.07 million, which is nearly 17% of the expenditures for the year. So carrying then that 1,070,000 ending balance to the beginning of 21-22, your proposed budget, including all known salary adjustments, which have not all been approved yet, but the negotiated agreement, and then, but what you have not incorporated is some of the ESSER funding.
Yes.
Okay, so showing that, excuse me, projected deficit of 107,309 for a carryout of about 963,000.
And what are our ESSER funds again? Dollar amount?
It is, it comes close to $1 million.
And we're going to be getting to that here in a couple of budget items, or a couple of agenda items.
But
Okay.
am I understanding though that that's basically all money other than some furniture that would be spending outside of the budget though, right? So they're kind of
Nope.
separate or not?
We got more information this week that we can use it for existing budget items. So like the mental health agreement that we have with Sanford, was $10,000 some dollars a year. We could actually allocate that because of the mental health aspect of the CARES money. So then that would reduce that deficit by $10,000. So there's different things that we can look at that we can use the ESSER funding for.
Okay.
And then this is only a first reading, and we'll revisit this at least one more time. When do we have to approve the final budget?
August. It would be at our next meeting, August 10th.
Well, we'll review it again in July, but then by August 10th, we have to approve it.
Yes.
To submit, and we have to approve our tax levy as well?
Yes, on August 10th.
Okay,
So in
so,
July, I should have better numbers after we close the year.
okay, so we do need a motion. We can continue to discuss anything you want, but we do need a motion to approve this as a first reading.
I'll make a motion to approve the first reading of the budget.
Nagel moves to approve the first reading of the 21-22 budget. Is there a second?
Second.
Schmitz seconds. Is there any discussion? Any further questions or discussion?
My discussion would just be, I would like to see a balanced budget this year instead of a deficit budget. That's my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, no more questions or discussion on the budget. Let's put that out for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion passes. All right, back to the packet. We inserted the first reading of student handbooks. The first one in my packet is the 7 through 12. I like the way it's presented, that anything that's changed is highlighted. That's helpful. Any questions? Should we we may as well do them both together. It's just a first reading.
I have a question for Mr. Veda.
Mr. Beta,
On the study hall, the 20 minutes of sustained reading, is that like textbook reading or not?
Like your AR book reading.
Okay, so even if my question is, so if you come to study hall and you have.
If there's a textbook to read,
Yeah.
that would be acceptable reading, yes.
Okay.
Just there's not many textbooks there. What we're trying to do is limit the screen time, so give them a physical copy to read, expose them to more vocabulary, so. That makes sense?
Yeah, and I'm, the idea is good. I mean, we're weak on reading, so, but I'm just wondering if, if you have work to get done, you're saying you want this before they actually do their
20 minutes, 30.
schoolwork.
And it's gonna be a 50-minute study hall.
Yep.
So they have plenty of time to work on schoolwork.
And you'll have class every single day, so like more work will get done in the classrooms rather than when you were only meeting like 4 days a week with the flex mod. A lot of the stuff had to go outside the classroom.
okay, any other questions on the proposed high school 7 through 12 handbook? And keep in mind, we'll do a first reading today and a second reading in July. And typically our principals are not working. Well, I'm sure you're not working at all in the summer, but you're not expected necessarily to be at the July meeting. So if you have questions, how should we address them to you between now and July? Just send an email, give a call,
More calls, yeah.
okay?
One thing I don't have in mind, on the last page of the matrix, there was some change on there I didn't highlight just because the color got crazy on me, but that's on the very last page. Some changes, since there's not open mods taken from the students, some of those things got modified for detention. And for the upper kids, for the more severe stuff would be either loss of open campus lunch privileges where they'd have to remain on campus is what I added in there instead of open mods, and they don't have open time. If that makes sense.
Okay, any other questions about the 7 through 12 handbook?
The grading scale change, could you go
Yep.
a little bit of detail about the process of that?
Yep, so literally almost all these changes were presented to my staff, and we discussed the grading scale. There were 5 options we presented. This is the one that was voted on that the staff wanted. This is actually the original OHS grading scale we had like 5-6 years ago. And some of the difficulties we're having with the 90, 80, 70, 60 grading scale was we're having lack of motivation for students to go above and beyond and go deeper, because they say, well, why do I want to get a 98 or 96 or 95 when I can just get a 90 and get an A? Same conversation with D's, C's, and B's. There wasn't a desire for them to go deeper. So the staff liked the fact that there were some pluses and minuses in there that distinguish differences in those breakdowns of grades. And so that's the one that they wanted. That's tied into GPA to the right. So if you were to get an A+, you get a 4.33 GPA, whereas if you just had an A, you get 4. So it incentivizes you to go above and beyond, and you're rewarded for going above and beyond in the classroom. So those are some of the discussions that we had moving from a 90 to 76 to grading scale. And the original, answer Rand's question, the original reason we moved to a 90 to 76 grading scale, we had several students that were missing out on the state scholarship. One of the requirements to earn the state scholarship was you can't have any grade below a C. And at that point, we had several students that would have like a C-, usually their freshman year, and it typically was in Spanish as their first elective. And so that disqualified them. And our grading scale, when this was the grading scale, our C- was a C or even higher than a C in other schools. And so we said, well, if we put that grading scale to 90 to 70, 60, we'd have more kids qualifying for that state scholarship that wouldn't be getting robbed or losing that $6,000. But that just isn't the case. We haven't had the students reaching those benchmarks on the ACT, and they've still been qualifying through the CTE route. So after 4 or 5 years of looking at that, it didn't give us the desired result we wanted when we went from grading scale like that to 90, 70, 60. So those are some of the discussions we had to move to a different grading scale now.
Okay, anything else on the high school 7 through 12? If not, let's move on to the elementary handbook for 21-22. Anything you want to highlight, Mrs. Sell?
We're gonna keep the drop off and pick up the same as this year. We found that limiting who can come into the building was really helpful. I guess that was one of those things with the pandemic that helped, that kind of got to see things for years. The teachers have, it's like, as soon as the door unlocked down at that end, we had a rush of people and our building just wasn't as safe as we wanted it to be because we still had kids transitioning and people just came rushing into the building, or in the morning we had people wandering around that we didn't know who they were. So we felt like this year it was a lot safer for the kids. So we decided that that's what we want to do, is we want to keep the same thing for this year, that we're going to keep the drop off and pick up. The doors are open in the elementary and they're going to be greeted by people the same exact we did this year. So parents won't be coming into the building unless we come to the office and sign in. Electronic devices, we're still going to have the same thing, except for we're not going to let electronic devices be taken out on the playground. That caused some difficulties. Other than that, there really isn't anything too major.
There's one typo right in the first section.
Okay, which one?
Policies, the second, right at the end of the first sentence. They're highlighted.
Oh, okay.
Policies.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That
I borrowed that from Brandon.
I didn't notice it in yours,
No, I we typed it in there.
So, speaking of that, is that you're done, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, could you highlight on what your plan was there, too, Mr. Bader, then, on electronic devices?
Yeah, it really, electronic devices are just becoming a real distraction in the classroom. All the issues that we usually have with discipline or bullying or things like that are centered around electronic devices. And we're not saying you can't bring them in, but we're saying that when you're in the classroom, the teachers are gonna be asked to have you put those away. Now, they may ask you to put it into a container or hang them up or what have you, but if a student has a phone out and they're not authorized to have that phone out for school activity, we're gonna have them turn it into me. And then at the end of the day, the student will get it. If it happens again, they'll turn it into me. I'll ask the parent to come in to grab it because it's distracting from the learning. And if it happened a third time, then we'd go on the matrix and then we'd have them grab the phone at the end of the day and go from there. So just trying to eliminate the distraction those phones have with our students, and allow them to participate in the conversations that are taking place, work on their classwork, their group discussions or projects, not be distracted with phones. And so that was the goal for the phones, is to try to eliminate those distractions so we can really concentrate in the classroom and have work be work.
Okay, any other questions for either of the principals on the proposed 21-22 student handbooks? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve these as the first reading of the student handbooks for 21-22?
I'll make a motion.
Rosendahl moves the approval of the two student handbooks. First reading, is there a second?
I'll second.
Nagel seconds. Any further discussion? Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the Starion Bank Track and Field Agreement. We looked at this, what, a year ago, longer than a year ago? Remind us that
Sure.
the track is all in and paid for by Oaks Public School, and now this agreement, the naming rights, the sign, two signs, the zoning, the signage matter. With the completion of approval and signing of this agreement, we will now collect $10,000 a year for 5 years from Starion for this agreement. Okay, were there any questions or concerns about the agreement? We did ask quite a few questions back when we first considered it, and several things were adjusted at that time.
Yes, a little history, you know, we got hung up because the North Dakota Department of Transportation was not allowing us to put a sign down there. And just a brief overview of the last several months, they ended up getting, a request, or they asked for a request from the federal Department of Transportation on what to do. And in the end, they came back and said, well, permit's really not needed, you can just do it. And so it was approved after all that. And everything that you talked about in the board, the Starion Bank is updated, and that's in this proposal that's in your packet. I met with John, we had Roxy out there, Brendan was out there, Randall and Dan Spellberg were also out there in terms of where the signs would be placed. There will be a sign on the north side of the Career Tech Ed Center. Obviously not in the DOT right away. It'll be on our property, and that will be lit. That sign will be, there will also be another sign that's going to be over by the pole vault, and that will not be a lit sign, but it's going to say something similar to "Welcome to Starion Bank Track and Field."
I believe that he put stakes where the signs are too. So if you drive by and you see the stakes, because I think he left them there that day, Craig, when we figured
Yes.
out signage.
Yep, it is staked. So my recommendation is you approve that. It's for 20 years, and the school will get $50,000 in exchange for it being named Starion.
20 or 10? 20? I don't remember.
I thought it was 20. Maybe I'm wrong. April, do you remember?
It says 2041.
Hmm.
That seems long, but that's what we agreed to, right?
I think it's in there, and I thought we were gonna change that where the track wasn't used for 1 year. It says this agreement's voided if the track's not used for 1 year.
Yeah, that was supposed to be changed. Is that still in there?
It is, it says 24.
24 months?
Or no. Isn't that what it said? I can't remember where it was now.
They did add on the blast that or pandemic.
Right, it's in blue. Where is it?
So here's the exceptions if anything, I mean, there's a change in the use due to these things.
Okay,
Okay, and also if you look on page 5 of the agreement, district default, it says for a consecutive 12, under C, a consecutive 12-month period of time, the complex is shut down. It does say 12. Is there, if there's somewhere else that it says 24?
I just remember the one.
okay.
But they added that clause about pandemics, which I think is what our concern was, wasn't it?
So, yeah. It's kind of the will not be liable in the effect due to any of the following.
Oh, pandemic is already in there and yet they added it.
Yep.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the Starion agreement as presented, or are we asking for any additional changes?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Thorpe moves to approve the Starion agreement. Is there a second?
A second.
Nagel, seconds.
It is weird that they have pandemic and epidemic twice in the same paragraph there, isn't it?
Probably doesn't hurt a thing.
No,
but-
probably doesn't, it's just odd.
All right, any other discussion? Proposed amendments, concerns?
I'm sure you gotta scrap this in for a damn pandemic. There's a lot of things we worked on this one.
have gone away in 14 months, because this is how far back it goes. I think the 20 years is long for that to come out.
I agree.
What do we end up total for donations from other people, individual? We remember that?
I don't remember the total dollar amount. April, would you happen to have a rough estimate of what the total donations were?
Yeah, hold on.
Pushing.
Let's see, it would have been, what's 3,500 times 3, 10. So it would have been 30,000 from other people.
All right, any other questions or discussion? Hearing no further questions or discussion, all those in favor of approving the Starion agreement as it's presented to us, please say aye. Those opposed, say no. All right, is there some other work we should do on this agreement?
For 20 years. I don't remember, that's it, I don't remember, because we were working on this, also it just ended. It was just done. It's the first time we talked about it in 14 months. I think that was brought up to John to go back to them saying, for 50 grand, you're paying 20, a couple grand a year. And you're tying your, this next boards and future boards hands for, you want to do any enhancements down there. I think it's worth a discussion, saying 20 years.
Isn't there a change in there though that states if there's other areas that there's a first refusal option by Starion to match that? So that if they, let's say if there was an area, if there's more work to be done, that was one of the concerns we had was they're gonna call, yeah, right, you're gonna sell a scoreboard. And I believe that they added language in there that says that they would basically have first refusal on that so that we'd be able to have other options of people that, yep, that would be able to do that.
Page 4, exclusive right for first negotiation and right of first refusal to negotiate future agreement. Would you want to just put this off until next month? I kind of hate to do it because I know that, you know, Starion's worked hard on this, but if we aren't comfortable with it, then why don't we put it off? I don't want, we have a busy agenda. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time working on it now, but I want the board to be comfortable with what we've got.
I'd like to look at, I will ask them if that's their agreement on Mandan, kind of, where they, you know, these big, they put big donations in for 20 years. We discussed that a little bit, so.
All right, we do have a motion on the floor. Remind me who moved and seconded. Should we ask that be withdrawn, or should we do help me? What's the correct thing to do? To table it till the next meeting?
I just put motion failed due to lack of support.
So when I call John, who
I'd say for further, I'd say lack of support due to further clarification on the timeline.
Okay, so I don't want them to think that we don't want to accept their $50,000. I think what we really need is a review of, you know, what did we discuss a year and a half ago when we originally, because we have the agreement amended in front of us, but I don't remember all the discussions. April, can you, between now and the next meeting, provide to us a summary of our discussions and where we were, and get it to us as soon as possible so we can review and ask questions as we need to.
Yes.
Okay, is that what we want? All right, and we will revisit this at our next board meeting.
okay, so I'm gonna need to call John. You want me to tell him or the board is going to review it in July and they've got concerns about the length of 20 years? Is that what I should tell them?
Biggest concern.
Okay, but I think, I mean, I'm thinking that is what we agreed to in principle, and that we can, if in fact it is, which I assume it is, then in my view, we need to uphold that commitment. But it's just been so long that we just want to re-look at what we agreed to in principle, if not in writing.
I'll tell them you're not ready.
Have him call Bill if he has to know. No, if that's what we've agreed to in principle, then I feel we need to uphold that. But you're correct, Bill. It's been so long and we've had so many things in front of us that this was just set aside. And if we could redo this board packet or prep for this meeting, we could have had some of that historical information back. And maybe it's meeting minutes, maybe it's previous versions of the
That's probably
agreement.
the biggest spot, but it's gotta be in the minutes because we discussed this all, this is back
Yes.
in last March.
And it may
Things are
be
normal.
that the minutes aren't as detailed as what we would like, and we may need to, you might want to hear a recording. Maybe those meetings may not have been recorded. All right, with that, then we are essentially tabling that. And we're moving on then to the TLA tuition repayment. Pretty good information in our packet with regard to our policy, what happened and what's been requested. Larry Engel started the TLA. Did you include no, I think you must have sent me his email with the requests and just that with, summarize his reasoning, like at his point in the career and in his career and how much time he was spending. Was that his concerns?
Yes, his email just basically stated that due to where he's at in his career and the amount of time that was required of him for this spring semester, he decided that it wasn't the right fit for him and has withdrawn from the Teacher Leadership Academy. And this information's in here because you as the board choose the dollar amount that's given. The superintendent approves what the program was, which I approved, obviously, the program for him to be in the TLA. We've had instances like this before, like for example, Mr. Podol, who was here and then left the district. In that case, he was required to pay the money back, but this situation is different. Larry is not leaving the district, and he doesn't have any intentions of leaving the district. He just is not going to be in the TLA anymore. So I'm asking for your guidance on what to do. Basically, it'd be, do you ask for the $600 and some back? Do you say that we're going to count that? Or do you hold him accountable to 5 years of service to pay the $600 back? Just wondering what you want done on that.
What are your thoughts?
They pay the money back.
He should pay the money back?
He wouldn't be obligated to stay for 5 years.
Okay, is that a motion? Okay, Thorpe moves that we require that Mr. Engel repay the $673.58 that the district invested in his tuition. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Schmitz seconds. I would just say that, I could go either way on this because again, I don't think he's going anywhere. On the other hand, it's after one semester, it's $673, but if we would set a precedent of saying that we're not going to require it back and someone is multiple semesters into it and the dollar amount is more, that would probably be setting a precedent we don't want to set.
Well, plus he's out of it. He's not gonna want to be tied up in a 5-year
Right,
contract
for
$600.
$600. All right, any other discussion? Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Motion passes. ESSER fund update. Interesting comments and detail. And April, I believe you said you got more information this week that maybe some of these dollars can be allocated differently than what you're showing us, or what are your thoughts and recommendations?
Okay, so the first few pages is we had to get stakeholder input. So we did place that survey out to the community to ask them, here are some suggestions we have for the funding. And then the feedback that came back. In addition, we have to work on some other narratives for the state, but the proposals that we have is for technology, construction, instructional staff, for extra learning loss. So that's kind of what the main areas are. I think there's 16 different areas that they gave us that the Department of Education has proposed that to use the ESSER funding for. And as I stated, so example, like the iPads, instead of using our general fund money, we would be using the ESSER funds to purchase all the iPads, furniture, curriculum, different things like that. The big thing is to tie everything back to learning loss.
So based on the feedback from stakeholders, are there any changes that, is the proposed allocation of the funds in our packet the same as it was in at the last board meeting?
Pretty much, yep. So the areas would be technology, building renovations, equipment, and learning loss. Are the major categories there. The survey came back with, there's a huge support for a kitchen remodel. So that would go into, we'd have to do a long range plan and try to figure out what money we could save using our ESSER funds to go towards maybe doing something in the kitchen. Or it could relate back to social distancing to make the place, to make the space bigger. But those are kind of all the different things that we're looking at right now.
And what do you need from us today? A motion to approve these proposed allocations?
Yes, yep.
Okay. Any further questions, or is there a motion?
I guess my question would just be if maybe the principals can give us a little input here. Is just spending this money after money after money after money on technology, are we getting anything back, or are we to the point now where we're spending so much on technology that we've hit the point where we're not really getting a lot back from the amount that where we're at?
What we're paying in technology now are some subscriptions that we would be paying for. It's not a lot of extra new stuff. Isn't it IXL and Renaissance?
No,
And
that's my first, just the renewal service.
yeah, so it's kind of helped us, like, we're not gonna have to pay for that, but I don't think we've got a ton of new technology. We bought the Osmos for the elementary, but those are some tools in the classroom. I don't know, that's a good question. I don't know if I'd have an answer.
It seems like the board, the classroom board, it's
Oh.
always just,
Trying to keep
10,000
up
here,
with it.
10,000 here, 10,000 here, another 20 here, another 30,000 here.
I think that's the world of technology, isn't it? Trying to keep up with how they advance so quickly, how they, like changing a computer every 3 years, or you're behind because you can't run programs and you can't do things you need to do that you're very reliant on now.
And is that setting us up now? If we don't have this money to update this stuff in the end, compared to a piece of chalk and a chalkboard?
I know that the smart boards on there are for the last few rooms that don't have them. Like the Cheyenne Valley rooms don't have them. And then they were gonna put one in the library for library use. So I think the last purchase of those smart boards would be to make sure everyone has a smart board that are similar.
I think it's just where we're at. I mean, our kids are, that's technology and it's where they are.
And I would say
Generation.
our young teachers that are joining us are also accustomed to a high level of technology, and it's good and it's bad, just like our phones are for all of us. These are a distraction for all of us every day, all the time.
I know,
And yet they're a great tool. What would we do without them? It's learning how to manage how they're used.
I think Robert was saying, yeah, this free money, which is crap, but it's not free money in 5 years when this has to come up, and as a
Well,
district,
now
you're
we
supposed
got
to update.
every room
Now what do you
board
do?
that needs to be replaced.
Because if you set that precedent, it's like, well, now, we go backwards, because this worst thing I ever did is just free money. Because we have to spend it.
So you don't want to send it?
I don't think those.
I understand what you're
smart
saying,
boards
but where do you
replace
stop
those
where the
all with a
updates?
laptop, though, Gary.
I think we've been lucky that we've had the money that we could upgrade them, you know, but I guess push came to shove, Larry would probably be the guy that would know that we would be able to make do with what we had, right? You know, it's just that the money's been there, so we've been able to upgrade and we've been
Okay.
able to do the things that we need
I'm not
to do.
disagreeing with that, but I said that's what every district in the states will be battling at, but eventually
Yes.
pay for your own way versus expect, oh, the neighboring district to pay for it, is what we're doing right now.
It's
And-
one of the proposals we have is so like our iPads and laptops that we purchased, instead of leasing them, we can purchase them outright. And then every year we can put money aside. So when they are due for an upgrade, we can pay for the majority of them instead of financing like we've done in the past. So it'd be setting up like a technology reserve fund almost. And the one thing that DPI has pushed is to use this money for long-term maintenance. So, you know, like you had said, Bill, they discourage using something like creating a new staff member. And then in 3 years, what do you do? So they want districts to use more of the money for that long-term maintenance, like curriculum, construction projects, technology, equipment, things that will help the district out now and in the future.
Good discussion. Any further questions or discussion? I don't believe I have a motion on the floor to approve the proposed allocation of ESSER funding, which we do need to do.
Yep.
I'll make the motion.
Nagel moves to approve the proposed allocation of ESSER funding as shown in our packet. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Rosendahl seconds. All right, any further questions or discussion? Good questions, good discussion, any more? Hearing no further questions or discussion, all those in favor of the motion to approve the allocation of the ESSER funding, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion passes. The next item on the agenda is staffing, and then following that, we'll have a specific discussion on the SRO. So with staffing, where is that? Isn't the,
It's in there somewhere.
yeah, it's in here somewhere.
I think it's after the policy.
Okay.
I think I put under negotiation committee.
Oh, I see. Okay, so let's get that in front of us. That is down on page 113 of the packet. 21, 22 admin and classified proposed compensation. Sheila, do you want to lead us through this or do you want to delegate that to April or Bill? Which the two of you work on
Shakes
this?
his head. All right, so when we did the negotiated agreement, we agreed to increase the base pay for the teachers by 2.5%. So we were trying to stay kind of consistent with that. And so we sat down for a few minutes with the admin and they agreed to the 2.5% increase, which is about 2,200 each. And that's the two principals, business manager. Oh, and Larry, sorry, I missed one on there. Section 125 automatically increases because of the negotiated agreement. So that's the $50 to $400. And that's just this year. So estimated cost of the district would be $10,700, about 2.3%. And then unclassified, Cheyenne Valley is switching their health insurance to 100% of a single policy. So we were trying to stay consistent with that, upping that to the single, or paying 100% of a single. Increase wages by 1.75%, but leaving the bus drivers where they are. And then Those not on health insurance do get section 125 benefit, and that would increase by about $2 to stay in line with that health insurance cost. So the estimated cost of district on that is about $24,254, about 2.8%.
And again, these changes, though only proposed at this time, are included in the proposed budget that April provided for us in advance of this meeting, correct?
Yes.
There go mute. Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, any other questions? And of course, Mr. Getz is not included because we already negotiated with him.
And the athletic director is not included.
AD is, we've pulled out for a separate discussion. All right, then is there a motion to approve the proposed administrative and classified compensation proposal, which has been presented by our negotiating committee?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Nagel moves to approve the proposal. Is there a second?
I'll make somebody else do it.
I'll second.
Thorpe, seconds. Any discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion passes. Is there anything to bring forward about staffing with regard to open teaching positions? Okay, great.
Yes. First of all, Amber Peters has been hired. She's going to be moving from a special ed paraprofessional in our building to the library paraprofessional, and she'll be filling Jessica's position, who is going to be who will be our junior high math teacher. As of right now, we have no applications for activities director. I do have someone that's reached out and said they're going to apply. That was a while ago. I have not heard back. I do have another person that said if this could be combined with something such as like a substitute teacher for 5 days a week, would be interested in the activities director position, but just a heads up on that. We have one application as of right now for head girls basketball coach, and I told that person for head girls basketball coach, please be patient. Just because we're not going through the process yet, I'd like to get an activities director hired if possible. First, and that's the last time I talked to that individual, but we're sitting on one for that position. And both science teacher positions are still open.
No.
Both science-based teacher positions are still open.
I tried Vietnamese. Couldn't do it.
Mr. B and I've had numerous conversations, and our conversations are plan for the worst, I guess, that if we have to do online learning and have a proctor in the room and you leave the positions open and try to find a teacher, that's probably going to end up being a worst case scenario for you. Interestingly enough, Don Warren was walking his dogs the other day and stopping by a house and asked the question. He said, yeah, we had a similar situation like that. I think when Don Osborne chose to stay home with Justice, that they apparently did online learning through, it was called Center Distance at that time, until they filled the position later on. I wish I had better news. That's where we're at as of now. Mr. Beta, am I correct when I said this?
Spot on.
What about kitchen staff?
Kitchen staff as of now, we only believe we're losing one, and that position will be open later this summer.
I suppose we haven't issued intents to rehire yet because we just
Right.
now did the approve the compensation.
Originally, we thought there'd be more turnover at the end of the year, and then it sounds like it's just going to be one.
What does it take for high school science needs a special, and then junior high can be any teacher whatsoever
Junior high can be an elementary degree.
with no stipulations, just an elementary degree is all you need.
Did they change the science requirements now? Because they changed, it used to be K through 6, now it's K through 8. So I think you're able to teach anything K through 8 if you have an elementary degree. But as soon as you get to 9 through 12, the credit bearing classes, you have to be highly qualified in those areas. So I'm working with Mrs. Brody's looking at maybe taking the praxis again and seeing if she would qualify, because once you take a praxis test, she would then automatically be highly qualified. They would consider it to teach science. She could pick up other classes or do it all together, but we're waiting to see there. But worst case scenario, if we can't hire anybody this year, then I'd be requesting the board to open a position up for a supervisor or proctor, what have you. But I don't know if we'd be able to offer all classes with only one teacher. We'd have to hire either one proctor, or if we'd have to hire 2 to fill in those extra classes. So right now we have basically 1.5 science teachers as far as class loads that we're trying to fill. So.
All right, so there's no action needed on any of this, right? This is just information. So, all right, with that, that completes our agenda item on staffing, but we'll move on to the item we added, staffing SRO. Is that information in our packet somewhere?
Yes.
Yeah, I find it's on page 110. And thank you, Chief O'Brien, for being with us today. Perhaps if anyone has a question, he'll be here and can answer. Craig, do you want to refresh us as to what, okay, I'm seeing actually a proposal here with a 50-50 split, a 60-40 split. What's the proposal?
Well, the proposal is the 50-50 split. Now, if you as a board would want more time, and the 50-50 split, I believe will be, is it 30 or 40 hours a week during the school year?
30.
What's that?
30 hours.
Okay, but yeah, 30 hours a week during the school year, you would have an SRO for the entire school year, and then you wouldn't have that during the summertime. But my request was, what I said in the email yesterday, originally I thought that you could wait and make this decision in July. My thought process on that was you'd have more time on budgetary issues. But then I talked to Matt O'Brien and let him know that, and he said that really puts their department in a pinch in terms of finding someone else, in terms of starting to buy the equipment to outfit an officer. And like you talked about, everything is on delay and how long it takes to get there. And so in doing so, I am asking you to consider that now so that could be started. Also, we did apply for the COPS grant. It is possible that you'll get funding to fund this, but I'm not relying on that, and I prefer you not to rely on that, because I think you making a decision on this for safety and security of our students and mental health of our students and staff. I think it's important that you walk into this saying that we're going to continue this long term, and I think it's important for the Oaks Police Department to know that too, so that it's not us jumping in simply because of a grant, even though we may get the grant. And we don't want to walk back after the grant's done and say, well, we're no longer going to do this, because then he's left with an individual that's going to need to, not be employed, and that was a problem last time. So, anything else I should add?
I can say that OEI did approve it, depending on the school board's decision. So 26,000 was approved by OEI. So all the vehicle stuff, the city has their COVID fund set aside. So everything that I've ever proposed, everybody is good to go. So just waiting on the school board to make a motion. Then I'll get Jeremy signed up for SRO school in August, which is early August. That's again why I'd like to get this going as soon as possible. And vehicles 6 months back, and all this other stuff too. So I've already checked in on almost everything I can to make sure we're ready to go.
One other reminder is that we're starting the DARE program next year, and your SRO will be teaching the DARE program, and there's curriculum for all levels of our kids.
And you'll be leaving on Sunday for 2 weeks for that in South Dakota as well. So we'll be shorthanded for 2 weeks for him going to that as well.
So if you recall from my report on the investigation that I did, I think I brought forward some challenges that are faced by administrators that with regard to sharing information and FERPA, which school resource officer is a sort of a hybrid position that has less challenges in those areas than our administrators do. Your hands in many instances were tied, and for whatever reason, a school resource officer has more flexibility in some of those areas. So it seems to me that we are considering whether or not the district should invest $41,228 under the 50/50 proposal for 30 hours a week during the school year of on-site school resource officer presence. Now, if someone else thinks that we should go 60%, what would that proposal entail for hours?
Well, like I said before, 30 hours is the very minimum. The main focus is the school and staff, so, and Jeremy knows that as well. Our focus is to make sure that the school has as much police presence. And I mean, we're looking at all sorts of things like the Alice training, so you can teach security for even the VOTEC Center and stuff like that, which I think everyone's familiar with the Alice training. Active threat, active shooter type stuff, so he'd be an instructor for that. Which you also can interpret for him, helping out businesses and stuff, planning for that. So we're really trying to expand this position so he can, do a lot of things here in the school. So.
And you have Jeremy Sitzler earmarked for this position, but ultimately, obviously, you would need to replace him as a officer on the force. And again, are you thinking that would be a possible, that you could hire someone in the current environment?
I would go out and be very active in trying to get somebody in here. Yes. Yep.
What would you do in the summer? We thought, obviously
School
school.
summer hours. I can show you, we've been crazy busy. I don't know what's going on right now. The nice thing would be is on weekends, we have a day shift and a night shift guy. I can say like this weekend, if I wasn't around, Jeremy would have been drained because we were out almost 24 hours a day trying to cover, where now you'd have an officer for 12 hours.
He basically,
Yep.
city guy, which is fine. The summer hours, he basically helps guys.
For 3 months it'd be, yep. Which we've been dealing with a lot of stuff, the youth and stuff too, which, I've been talking to Greg about. It gives us more options to provide, security and to make sure our staff is mentally fit, and not being drained as well. And he's already said even during the school year, he wants to come out and help all this stuff. So I think it's just a unique situation where we have a guy who's just not about the paycheck. He just wants to be a public servant. So
I'm gonna make the motion that we approve the 50/50. I think it's a much needed thing to have an SRO in the school system. We've seen a lot of different things go on this year, and it's a necessity. We need to find room in our budget for it.
Thank you. Nagel moves to approve the 50/50 cost share with the city for a school resource officer. Is there a second?
Second.
Schmitz seconds. We've had good discussion, but is there any additional discussion?
I just wanted to clarify that April said that she had included this in the first reading budget. Did I understand that correctly?
I don't believe not the school resource officer.
No. So that would be, the COPS grant is 3 years. Our ESSER funds are 3 years. So it could be, CARES money could be used to pay for this contract. And I've discussed this with Craig, but prior to Jeremy starting, it'd be nice to have a list of expectations, like a job description of what we want. I know just from past experience, it'd be nice to make sure that both parties have their expectations, knowing when he goes in there and not just kind of blindly telling him, here, do this. So.
So that could be in the form of, a couple of months ago, we saw a memorandum of understanding, but could be similar to that, but with more detailed.
for the COPS grant, we have to have an MOU between the
Okay.
city and the school board. So I think we can probably come up with a team to go over that again to make sure everybody's on board with that.
All right, any other questions or discussion?
April, how much room is there in our budget for the additional 41,000 going forward?
That just depends on how much deficit spending you guys want to do.
Well, I mean, you had said the budget isn't finished yet, so what leeway is there? What other things? I'm just trying to get an idea of what that would be.
You know, the big thing, like I said, I mean, I need to go through activities because we have some coaching changes. There'll be staffing changes because of our science teacher. There might be some savings in there. I mean, I could probably find, you know, 40,000 depending on how far we tweak the budget and how tight we want to pull in the reins. So.
Okay, that answers my question. I just want to see, is there some leeway in there where we can do that? Because obviously I agree it's important that we do it, but on the other side, we have to have money to pay for it.
Yep.
And we're already negative 100,000, so this is going to make us negative 141,000. And again, if we do get a grant, that's great, but after the grants are over, can we sustain? That's the
Exactly. Yep.
So it sounds like yes is the answer. There's some room, you believe?
Yep. I think I can try to move some stuff around.
And remember, I know it's not fun, nor exciting, nor probably wanted, but you have the power as the school board to increase revenues. And there are multiple different ways. I mean, Tom and I, when we used to meet with board negotiators, April and I discussed this. I mean, you as a school board would have the power at one meeting to bring in an additional over $500,000 per year in revenue. That doesn't mean that we're popular or wanted by our taxpayers, but you have that power to be able to do that. And I also think that I've done a terrible job of being able to hold us accountable to our budget in terms of us spending all the money that we said we're going to spend. You know, we always, I come to you usually this time of the year and I say, oh, you're going to raise taxes. And then you say, great, but you didn't spend the money that you said you're going to spend last year. And that same thing I think will continue, you know, as you looked at the budget, even though adding this and having the 140,000 in the negative, if history repeats itself, you won't be there again. But just my 2 cents. So I wouldn't be concerned if I were you about the budget, even the budget being at a negative 140,000.
Because typically what we budget, we don't spend, or our revenues for whatever reason exceed our projected.
And with ESSER funds, you're sitting on the next $1 million, and some of the ESSER funds are going to be used for things that are already in the budget. So those budget dollar amounts, you know, will be expended to the same levels they would have before, because now you're using ESSER money for it instead.
All right, any other questions or discussion? We do have a motion on the floor to approve the 50-50 cost share with the city for an SRO. Is there any further discussion or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion passes and it's approved. Great, thank you. All right, we'll move on to the fun part of the meeting now. Policy review. We have before us 1, 2, 3, 4 policies. Or do we need, let's. All right, Sheila's back. Let's look at our first 4 policies we looked at last month. These are second readings for student assemblies, graduation exercise, bidding requirements and procedures, data protection and security breaches. Now I should have gotten back to where I belonged. Okay. The proposed student assemblies, the policy we looked at last month included a prohibition on a student using prayer at a student assembly. I suggested, and I see April has deleted the word prayer from a prohibition. I looked up the definition of proselytizing, and that seemed to be, emphatically trying to convert someone, and I thought it was okay to leave proselytizing as a prohibition. But given that we just had a graduation exercise where we actually had a local clergy give an invocation and a benediction and prayer, I don't see why we should ask our students not to include a prayer if they're at an assembly. So that was my input on these four. Otherwise, is there any other questions or thoughts about these four second readings? If not, is there a motion to approve these four, FFG, GDB, HCAB, and IDC as second readings and final adoption?
Make a motion.
Schmitz moves to approve the second readings of these four policies. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thorpe seconds. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion passes and the policies are adopted. The next are first readings, which we suggest that there be a second reading. Those are in green on the spreadsheet, and I would call it pale blue on, as the background in the packet. I thought that perhaps GABC, sex education, should also be included as a second as a policy that should have a second reading. My question on that one is, you know, several years ago, Oaks Public Schools eliminated health from our high school requirements, and yet I noticed that something in this policy said that it should be offered in accordance with the Century Code. I thought we should have a little more review on that and follow up and make sure that we're okay. So I'm going to propose that we move GABC up to the first readings that require a second reading. I also had a question, if I'm looking down now on the no second reading required, HCAE. I didn't have time to get back with April on this, but it says that the board president's signature shall not be in custody of the business manager. Well, where in the world would it be then? I mean, because my signature goes on all checks along with April's, right?
Yep, I think they're referring to like a stamp, so I just can't
Okay.
stamp
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
where I
it.
want.
Okay.
You don't know about it.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so, but you have it in facsimile form, or how does it get on the checks?
So it's in the software system, so
Okay,
it's protected or whatever, but I can't just pull that off and put it on a, you know, something like the SRO approval or contracts or anything like that.
okay. So let's leave that policy then down with the no second reading required. So we're right now considering a first reading of FGA, GCC, HDD, KBA, and GABC as first readings with a second reading required in the next, at the next meeting. Is there a motion for approval of those 5 policies first readings? Nagel moves that approval of those 5 policies first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Schmitz seconds. All right, is there any questions or discussion? Did anybody see anything on those policies that they would like to bring forward for further research? All right, while we're here, gifts and bequests, and I had made a note for myself to bring this up during public communication, and I forgot. I was contacted by a district patron who is interested in promoting a new highway sign highlighting our state girls track championship. This person said that then they had spoken to someone about, and you know, the question, this reminded me because it's not really the proper, like you look at the girls' basketball sign, the wrestling signs, they're not property of the school, but it would seem to me like there should be some approval process whereby the district says, yes, it's okay that you can do that on our behalf. I suggested that this person should visit some with Corey Shaw, because I know he knows about, they had to move a bunch of their wrestling signs because they were too many in a row and it got too big. And there was some discussion or question about whether we should consider having one large display of all championships along the highway, as some other districts do. And it's not here for any action. It's in the exploratory stages, but I just bring that up because someone brought that to me. And I'll explore, what do we need to do next on that. So getting back to first reading, we do have a motion on this, right? Motion and a second on the first reading of these 5. Is there any further questions or discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion passes, and we will look at those again next month. So that leaves us with 1, 2, 3, 4 policies that are for first reading with no second reading. April, a couple of them, I thought the last action date on the spreadsheet was in 2010, when actually when I looked at the policies, we've already amended them in 2021. GCAA and GCBA.
Yep.
So were there changes from our very recent, from our January action, or did we just double up on these?
I think we doubled up on it. Let's take those 2 off so I can make sure that we're not taking out something that we added in 21.
Okay, so we're crossing off for the time being GCAA and GCBA because we think we may have already done those. So that means we're left with GABDB, that's Title Programs Dispute Resolutions Procedure, and HCAE, Disbursement of Monies, to be considered today as a first reading with very limited changes, and so a second reading not required. Is there a motion to approve those 2 policies as first readings with no second reading required?
Make a motion.
Rosendahl makes that motion. Is there a second? I'll second. Nagel seconds. All right, any discussion on those 2 policies for final adoption? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion passes, and I have nothing in here today for existing policy review, and we'll move on to Activities Director report.
There was none submitted.
I think we need to note though and congratulate the state track champions, both our athletes and our coaches, and then also the boys placed at state. I don't remember what they're.
Are we about 10? Maybe? Something like that?
Yes. Also the golf, their success this year. Was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Anything else that we missed in the spring? I got a 212 shout out that relates to activities, but we'll fix that later. So I'd just say that congratulations to the success. I mentioned this at the end of year staff. What's that?
Archery.
Yeah, and archery is heading to Worlds, and a lot of success there too. I mentioned this though at our end of the year celebration that I really appreciate what I'm seeing in our staff. I appreciate what I'm seeing in our students too, that whether they're stepping on the field to compete or whether they're stepping on stage to perform, the expectation is they're going to win. They're going to do well. I don't see that we hope to win or we hope to do well. I really witness and see we're going to do this. We're going to do it well. And I think that's been a great transformation. I attribute that to all the time and energy they put in the off season and preparing for that. So kudos to them.
All right. So thank you for that report. Now we'll have principals reports. Mrs. Sell usually gets to go first. That's the way we're doing it today.
So I didn't write up anything, but I did put in yours, our reading and math star and expected growth, and then also our reading proficiencies. So those are in there for you to see for the spring. Brandon and I and Mr. Getz went to Valley City on Tuesday to a threat assessment training. And I thought it was very good to try to determine if something is a low threat, a medium threat, or a high threat, you know, and what the next steps could be. And we're going to be forming a committee of Brandon and I, the counselors. Oh, Jamie Frank's been along with us too.
So clarify, you're talking about not a threat of academic.
Oh,
it's
no,
just
sorry.
like physical threats
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, physical threats at school. And it was positioned by 2 SROs from Bismarck. I think every school in Bismarck must have an SRO. And I was so glad you guys approved that, because after we came back from that, it was like, have an SRO would be instrumental in making sure, you know, because their part is just so different than what on the outside, you know, they're not walking around cuffing the bad guys, you know, they're in the school, they're embedded, they know the kids, they know what's going on in after hours too, you know, so they can kind of help us with that outside piece. And they're able to do so much more in the school just because of that link between the school and us. But I was, after listening to SROs, we saw the Valley City SRO was there, and how important it is that they're in their school in today's world. So that was a good training that we went through. Wednesday and Thursday, all through June, I'm with the teachers that are in the LA or the Leadership Academy, and that's here. Everybody, they're coming here. And so it's our 8 plus the 4 from Allendale, plus Mr. Kaiser, myself, and the 2 professors. So we'll be in the concession area. Then we have a couple days in August. That's ways out there. I don't even have that on my radar right now. But so there'll be, this is technology and political something or other, relationships like with the community, everything kind of interweaves, you know, in that program. So, and then summer school, we have summer school going on in the elementary right now. It's on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 8 to 12. The kids come for about an hour. Katie is doing the PKs coming in kindergarten, and I think she's got them coming in 2-hour blocks, but she's only doing Tuesdays during June, and then during August and July, she'll be doing Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So it's contact of about 27 hours for the kids that they come in, and they're working on skills that the teachers, Becca Roberts is teaching one, Katie, like I said, and then Jess McGuire is teaching the older kids. So they're looking at the skills for each of the kids and trying to very individualize for summer. In the past, we've just had like summer reading programs, but that's not what it is. It's every kid has a different program, and so the teachers are trying really hard to make sure that it's individualized.
And what age group is that? K through
5 going into 6. So we don't have for the 6th grade going over to 7th grade. So Katie's got the Ks for this coming year. Becca's got the 1s, the 2s, the 3s, and then 4, 5, and 6 are down with Jess down in upper elementary. So.
Is there anything for incoming kindergartners?
That's with Katie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's
So they're incoming kids.
And then they also have, some of the teachers have some of our special ed kids that they are able to come to summer school. Some of them qualify for summer school and special ed.
Any other questions for Mrs. Sell? All right, Mr. Veda.
May students of the month, for high school, we have JC Paraska and Cooper Quant selected, and junior high was Connor Butke and Bridger Foss, so congratulations to those 4 students for rounding out the year. I also included in you guys' packet the yearly results. The graph would be the results for this spring for the STAR assessment, and then you can see the percent proficient and what percent of students made growth in those categories. We talked about the handbook. I guess the last thing that was in your packet was, Sonia, you mentioned updating the driving contract. So if that's fitting for what you guys want it to look like, at the bottom of the document, so the OHS school board originally approved this policy on October 15th, 1996. This policy has been approved and adopted to the parent-student handbook for 2021-22. If you would approve the handbook, then this would be the documentation for the contract signifying you guys have approved it every year. So looking for feedback on that for the driving contract.
Now, my question was, is there any changes or that is the one that's already in effect?
This has been the same policy that's been in effect since 1996. Sonia, you said you wanted to kind of update it to show that we're still approving it every year because it's part of the handbook. The handbook says there's a driving contract, all students, parents must sign for them to drive at the center. So the addition would be like the last line on that document.
I think that this should, I don't see any reason why it even needs to say that the school board approved it in 1996, because none of these kids were born then. And to me, whatever this says, it should just match what's in the student handbook, because that's what this board approves.
Okay.
And I think it's fine to say that the policy was approved and adopted in this parent-student handbook, and I'm not going to take the time to go back and cross-check it and see if it says what the handbook says. I assume it does, but I will do that. But I think it's fine, but it doesn't need to refer to the 1996 school board, because we may have changed a lot of things the 1996 school board had decided.
You want me to strike that line out then?
I don't see, does anybody else see any reason why it should be there?
Not that.
But I will review it and cross-check it with the handbook. And in my view, this is, the contract itself isn't necessarily something that the board should approve. To me, this is an exhibit or an administrative regulation, like you have many of those, and we don't need to approve it, but it should match what it says in the handbook, because that's what we do approve, just like a policy, right? Okay, any other questions for Mr. Bader? Will you have more report?
Nope, that was all I had.
All right. Thank you. Superintendent report, your last one at Oaks Public School.
My last one. And my favorite part, the 212 shutouts. Mr. Leon has led his students through an amazing transformation this year. The band and choir concert was a showcase of hard work and determination by both the students and Mr. Leon. Thank you to Mr. Leon. And, sorry.
Can I add to that?
You sure can.
And thank you to Mrs. Hay.
Speak up, please.
And thank you to Mrs. Hay for mentoring him throughout the year.
I would just like to add, Mr. Lean was also an assistant golf coach. I've never been to a golf meet before, but on 2 occasions this year, I ended up driving to a golf meet and taking players from the golf meet to a baseball game. Mr. Lean was not at either of those, but Ms. Sheeler was a rock star golf coach. I noticed many of the golf coaches spent a lot of time in the clubhouse visiting. Ms. Sheeler was out on the course the entire time, and literally one time people were in Carhartt coveralls and blaze orange gloves. It was 33 degrees and windy. Also, I did attend the first day of the state meet, and both Ms. Sheeler and Mr. Lean spent the entire day on the course watching and coaching our kids, and they were very good.
Excellent additions. Thank you. This last one is for me. Thank you for entrusting me to be your superintendent these last 5 years. Nancy and I are thankful for our kids' education and for the staff, fostering love of education in our kiddos. To the Oaks Board of Education, the OPS staff, and Mr. Getz, I wish you nothing but the best as you continue pursuing excellence. Our family will forever remember our time as folks from Oaks. So, thank you. And then my other items on my report, you already have known about the school resource officer. You took care of it. The paraprofessional, as you remember, there was a request for me to approve that. I didn't bring that to the table today. That could be for a further meeting for adding a paraprofessional, so that you'd always have at least 2 people out at recess, and that's a follow-up from the formal complaint. And then last but not least is the activities director. As I said, we don't have any applicants. Mr. Getz has been working with Sonia about the possibility of tweaking what that would look like, and I'll let him talk to you about that at a later time. But as of now, I don't know that we'll get positions filled in the month of June. Time will tell.
And what is the status of the contract with Sanford on the counseling?
The status of the contract with the counselor with Sanford is still in the hands of the state, and the state has paused approving licensure for the type of person that we're asking for mental health services. And apparently they've stopped that because of how many people got immediate emergency licensure during the pandemic. And according to Bob Hagan at Sanford, they're waiting for the state to say, yeah, we're going to do that again, because the person that Sanford has picked for us is from Minnesota and does not have a North Dakota license. So we're in limbo, unfortunately.
I wonder if anyone has appealed to the governor's office or anything, because
Good question. I don't know
I mean, that's something that's in his wheelhouse, to streamline that kind of thing, and that's his issue. So I will see if I can reach out to someone there and see if there's anything we should be doing as board members, individuals, reaching out and saying, let's get this done for our kids. With regard to the activities director position, I just want to share a brief history of what I remember, and I think maybe Brandon can chime in a little bit. When I got on the board 9 years ago, Principal Warren was also the activity director, and I think that his compensation for that position was something like $5,000 or $6,000. Then when he departed, then Jason Schmitz took it on for the remainder of the school year, and his teaching load was reduced by maybe 1 or 2 classes to in addition to the compensation. You know, he was a teacher, and his compensation was increased by the proportional amount of the $5,000 or $6,000 for the remainder of the school year, and his teaching load was reduced. So his compensation was truly more than the $5,000 or $6,000. Then he departed after that partial year, and you took, or did he do it for a full year after that? And then you took it on, and I believe your research indicated, I think you researched, I remember you coming with, you know, rugby paid $7,500 or $8,000, and was your teaching load also reduced a bit?
When I took the AD, that's when we couldn't get a junior high, we couldn't get a high school math teacher. So I had to bump over and teach geometry and algebra 2, but I didn't have algebra 1, so I had 4 classes.
Okay. And so then we moved ahead, and we had Sherry, and her class, she was also a teacher and did not, you know, she had a somewhat reduced class load. So when you look at the compensation, which has increased a bit, and couple that with, typically we've had a reduced class load for the teacher, you know, the compensation has truly been a little bit more, you know, maybe 1/7 or 2/7 or 2/6 more, depending on how you would evaluate the compensation of the teacher and the class load. Then Brennan had it, and now he's not a teacher, and so his compensation was what his compensation was. I would suggest that we may have additional needs, whether it be proctoring, whether it be distance education, long-term full-time substitute teacher, communications needs. We may need to review the whole position, and further, I've observed that, you know, I'm not going to say that Mr. Hack hasn't done his job. I think that with the, you know, the compensation and the time that he's compensated for, he was compensated for what he did. But there's many things that I see that seem to be left undone, and I'm not being critical of him, because that's just, you know, it just wasn't, there isn't time.
Well, I saw it when I was, Lucas Klein and I think Jeremiah and them are gonna take a little bit of football over, which after 12 years, I'm tired of that crap too. It's, but I looked at Cherry's a couple years ago, and I said, this is ridiculous, because I didn't let her do elementary football. I wanted that myself so I could be in charge of it. I've said from the start, there's a possibility of, there's two, you have a senior high and a junior high elementary, and you split that up. There's so much. And I looked at her book one time, like, wow. I mean, you got every activity, every date, everything. I said, doing the entire school, that's just a thought that splitting that up into a junior high, an elementary, and then a senior high, or something to that fact, because it's, if you can't get one to do it all, maybe a little more enticing. Well, I'm just got the junior high. I don't have to worry about trying to, that stuff, and then all these times, you have junior high, senior high, girls, boys, it's a lot.
Speech, drama.
It is, it's a lot.
Yeah. And so Mr. Getz has been gathering some job descriptions from other districts, and I haven't had any extra time in the last several weeks. And so now I'm gonna try to work with him, and maybe we'll bring some thoughts and proposals, and maybe we'll get some things out to you to think about before we meet again, so that you have some time to roll some things around. But I think that it's a good time to consider changes. And cover more needs and do a better job at it. Okay? So then we get to committee reports. Unless anything else?
Nope.
Any other
No, that
questions
was it.
for Craig? We've already covered the negotiations committee. The logo task force I have served on. I tell you what, we've gotten a lot of love in the last week or so.
That's what you call it. Brought up a lot.
No,
This is almost up there with flex mod.
Well, I'll tell you, Larry did a nice job of gathering us together and leading us through considerations of numerous iterations of some things that we looked at. I think as I've reflected on this, I think that where we fell down is the whole communication process from the beginning. Like, did we research? Well, honestly, I don't think we have an official logo. Some people think it's the Twisty Tornado. I don't know. Was that ever adopted by the board? Is there a protocols for use of that? I mean, every time anybody orders any tornado apparel, they don't use that. And so I'm a little surprised that there seems to be a lot of love for that, because very, very rarely is it used when we order apparel. And I think that there are some issues with the format that we have it in, that it's not really a usable format. I'm going to take it upon myself to do some research as to the history of that. In fact, I tried to talk to, I understand Doug Sitzler drew that. And I'm going to visit with him later today and find out the history, what was the purpose, should we start with that and tweak it and make it what we need? I just think we need to do more.
The conversations I've had was, I think most of the feedback was because we're paying someone to design this versus using our art class, or,
Okay.
that was the biggest feedback I got. I don't think the whole changing the logo really upset anybody.
So I'll go back to, this was before Craig's time here. When Josh Johnson was here, I think I looked around and saw all the different tornadoes we had, and I said, you know what? Let's have some of our students, let's have a contest or a promotion to have students, or even young or any alumni design a new logo for us. And we did that, and we had zero response. So, and this is just something I would like to include in communication. We tried this, and
What is the cost? I mean, what are we paying for the design?
Yeah, it was a side added benefit of when we redid
And that's what I thought.
the school website. And a little history, the challenge that we really had is that we have the image, but it's not in high resolution and it's not in the format needed. So when companies are saying, can we get your logo, or people or groups or activities are saying, can we get your logo so that we can get it, put on your design, and we'll show you what it looks like, and we send it to them. That's not a high resolution. It's not the right fit. So that's really the challenge we've had. It's not necessarily that we dislike what it is. It's that we wanted it to be one that we would have. And so that if anybody was using it, they were using the same one, and we could provide that to groups or organizations. And when we redesigned the website logo, there was an option of a logo design, and I think it was $1,500 for the logo redesign, and that's where that came from. And then the task force got started, and the task force has spent lots and lots of time reviewing and going through different versions, and came out with these three and put them out. And there's been a lot of chatter on social media about it, and there's also some I've even seen comments of, why are you changing the name? Well, there's no name.
I know,
change.
that
So
got way.
it's kind of gotten twisted and convoluted, and I agree with Sonia. We didn't do a good enough job of explaining what we're doing and why we're doing it. But what's really funny is that the wrestling apparel, and maybe a lot of the other apparel, they've not used the twisty with the arms down probably in a decade. And they just use whatever version, whoever they're buying the apparel from that year is being done, and people don't complain. So we've got a lot of different versions out there, different options. And anyway, that's where it's at. That's where it's at as of right now.
So I'll take that on since I'm still gonna be a member of the board. Unless anybody else wants to.
Well, I think we need to put out there why we're looking at changing
Agreed.
the logo.
Agreed. All right. So if you have more comments on that you'd like to share with me, that would be great. All right. So with that, anything else for reports that we've overlooked? If not, let's move on to the minutes. Did we only have one meeting? Good heavens. What was wrong with us?
We're slipping.
The minutes of the May meeting are in your packet.
Bless you.
Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Were there any changes that need to be noted? If not, is there a motion to approve? Schmitz moves to approve the minutes of the May meeting. Is there a second? Thorpe seconds. Any discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Let's look at the financial reports. The three reports we'll approve together are the reconciliation, the balance sheet, and the revenue and expense report. Anything you want to highlight, April, on those reports?
Nope, I put most of my notes on the report, just to explain why things were over budget. I suppose I should probably put stuff in there of why things were under budget too, but yeah, anyway.
Well, there's
I
a lot of reconciliation to be done now in the next 15 days or by the end of the month, and it should be much cleaner next month, right?
Yep.
Okay, any questions? All right, if no questions, is there a motion to approve the reconciliation, the balance sheet, and the revenue and expense report as presented in your packet?
I'll make that motion.
Nagel moves the approval of those financial reports. Is there a second?
Second.
Rosendahl seconds. Any discussion? Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries. We will move on then to the review of bills, which are beginning on page 140 of our packet. Is there a motion to approve those bills as presented?
I'll make the motion.
Nagel moves to approve the bills as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any, Schmidt seconds. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any questions or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries. All right, is there anything else needed for the good of the order? If not, a review of our next regular meeting. April brought to my attention, did you, the format of our previous, all the while I've been on the board, has been that the old board meets, closes out the school year, and then adjourns, and then the new board reconvenes. Did you suggest that there may be some changes to that, April?
Yep, I sent a request to Amy at School Board Association to clarify. But when we were at election school, she made the comment that July 1st is when the new board takes over. So if there was any old or unfinished business, we would have to meet in June to take action on that. Otherwise, July would be actually the beginning of that year of the new board. But I will let you guys know. I'll reach out to her again. I sent it last week and she didn't reply, so I'll ask again.
All right, so then our next regularly scheduled meeting would be Tuesday, July the 13th. Our 7 a.m. is what you want to continue to go with for the summer. Okay.
Just not, no more Monday at 7.
I know, and you know that is, I'm
Yeah.
also going to reach out to School Boards Association about that, because that's state law, that you have to meet
So many
six days after your election,
What
which is all,
difference?
and so I asked you guys, do you want to meet at 7 a.m.? I
And
would
next-
Well, it's better than 5.
Next year, canvassing is 13 days after election.
Oh, they have changed it, so that still puts it on a Monday.
Yep.
Unless, I mean, I guess we don't have to have our election on a Tuesday, do we?
No, we don't. We can pick the date.
Thursday. Tuesday's just. normal
Yeah,
day.
it's just election day.
Yeah.
All right, so also keep in mind that I think we'll want to have a robust board retreat with our new superintendent and our new board member. I'll reach out to Monica, and perhaps she and I can get together with April and do a new board member orientation, so that she feels like she's got some background information, and direct her to resources prior to our next meeting. And otherwise, thank you to Dr. Steinhoff for your years of service here, to Bill for your years of service. Maybe this is your last meeting,
Might
Bill.
be.
We know it's Craig's last meeting, but, and April baked, so be sure to take a cupcake.
Slaved away.
So with that, I will declare this meeting adjourned at, 9:02. Good long meeting. We had a lot of stuff, so thank you.
April.